Welcome to another awareness podcast slash video for our readers at Homeland Security today to learn more about human trafficking. Today, we're very, very happy to be sitting down with Lantern Rescue, an incredible organization that is combating human trafficking all around the globe and in the United States. We were very fortunate to meet them on one of our trips to Poland to aid Ukraine. And given the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, we're seeing human traffickers leveraging that crisis to traffic human beings. So Ren is co-founder and vice president of Lantern Rescue. And Ren, welcome. We're very excited to talk with you today.
Thank you. I'm very excited for this opportunity. Thank you for wanting to have us come on here. This is a great platform to be able to spread some awareness about human trafficking.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate you joining us. We know you're really, really busy all around the globe. So I guess, we just want to start with kind of why you decided to found Lantern Rescue and kind of some of your focus areas.
Sure. So Lantern Rescue was founded by myself and my partner, Mark, and we had this vision of what we thought it looked like to work in the human trafficking world and how we could best make an impact. And we had worked with other organizations a little bit and didn't necessarily agree with everything that they were doing. And we thought that maybe our model would be a little better. So the model that we use is to go into other countries and to train their local law enforcement to become counter-human trafficking task forces on their own. So when we're not there, they're able to conduct raids, investigations, recovery of victims, and to facilitate the aftercare process and prosecution without us being in the country. So what we do is we initially assess a country, assess their need and their abilities to establish a counter-human trafficking task force and their buy-in. What do their laws look like? What is this a place that this is going to work in? Where are they falling at on the tip report? We take a lot of stuff into account. And then we identify which unit within their police force, and we always look for one that has national jurisdiction that would be best suited to counter human trafficking. And usually that's some form of, child victim services. It's going to be something more like that, sex crime, someone that's already made the conscious decision that they want to work in this type of field, because you don't want people in this field that are forced into it. You have to have a passion for it, or you will have a very hard time coming to work every day. So we'll identify them, we'll do their training and assist them with whatever that training looks like. Sometimes it's learning how to better handcuff them, investigation tactics, interrogation tactics, working with prosecutors, judges, victim services. After the raid, where are these victims going to go? We kind of all encompass that process and help them move forward with it. And then we come back and we recertify them. We go on raids and we have constant communication with them and constantly improving their training and helping them become better.
That's terrific. We actually talked to Kevin Metcalf, head of the National Child Protection Task Force this month as well. And I can tell that you're all kind of rowing in the same direction. So that's great to see. You can't really talk about trafficking without going international. So how are you working internationally, and what countries are you most involved with?
Yeah, that's right. So we have 6 main countries that we have specific counter trafficking footholds in, and units that are specifically trained for counter trafficking. Before I get into them, I'd like to just touch on Ukraine a little bit. That's how you met us, and it's a huge crisis in the world right now. So our operations in Ukraine and Poland look different than they do in other countries, and the operations there are more of a preventative effort and in some forms reactionary to trafficking situations. But what the main concern in places like Ukraine, places that are just completely stuck in conflict and crisis right now, is that when you're fleeing from conflict and crisis and you have left with just what's on your back and you have small children with you, that is a trafficker's delight. They are looking for those type of people. There's no one in Ukraine that's still accounting for them. That country's at war, and Poland hasn't gotten their RSVP, so they're not expecting these people to be there. So they're in this interim where no one's really tracking them, and they could disappear and no one would know. So one of the operations that we've set up over there is to inform people as they're fleeing, here's your options. This is what trafficking looks like. If the situation seems too good to be true, it probably is. There's going to be a lot of people that are offering you jobs, places to stay. Oh, I'll take your kids. My kids go to this school. I'll just take them and I'll put them in school with my kids. And while you get on your feet, and then you can come get them when you're ready. Like, those are not situations you want to be in. In times of crisis and conflict, you want to find comfort in the consideration and the generosity of strangers, because that's how you survive. But not all strangers are meant have good intentions. So we're really trying to counteract that, and we're really trying to help people understand that these places are rife with trafficking, and it's the exploitative environment is huge when there's conflict.
So where else are you working? And of course, I think, towards the end, I may ask you more about this, but I know that people are going to want to get involved. And so if you want to
Absolutely.
share with, like, if you do take volunteers to go to Ukraine, I get the request all the time, how can I help Ukraine? And I
So
talk about your organization and of course other things that I'm doing. But yeah, if you talk a little more about where else you're working in the world, and then, how we can get involved, that would be great.
absolutely. So a great way to get involved is to share, to help with sharing our posts on social media, sharing that we do have a podcast, Lantern Rescue. You can find it on all podcast apps. Sharing that and helping with awareness is huge. We take limited volunteers, so I don't want to overstate that. I know everyone wants to volunteer, and we would love to take everyone, but we are very limited in the amount of physical volunteers that we can take. But there's always ways to help. You can host a freedom dinner. You can invite us to come speak. I've spoken at a lot of events lately, and we're happy to travel and come speak to your organizations and groups. You get to know us a little better, hear a little more of the inside scoop, and just really sharing that awareness. If you have a church group that you'd go to, you can, share us in your church group, even if it's just your own presentation you put on about human trafficking and helping to spread the word there. So always look at the website. The girls are really great with posting on social media if we do have openings and we have other stuff going on. So stay up to date with us on the website, social media, subscribe to the newsletter, and you'll find ways to get involved there. But the other places we're involved in. So we have a heavy presence in Western Africa. We also have a lot going on in the Caribbean and in Asia Pacific. So in those areas, we have 6 countries that we're highly involved in. And trafficking internationally looks a lot different than it does domestically. So trafficking internationally, the 3 main types of it that we see, and there's a lot, but the 3 main types of trafficking that we see are labor trafficking, debt bondage, and sex trafficking. So labor trafficking, it looks so different overseas because they have a lot less labor laws. There's a lot less regulations on labor. So you will openly see children working in brickyards. You'll see them working in fields. You'll see them begging on the streets, and it's not hidden. It's commonplace. There's house slaves in Haiti. There's all different types of child labor that is very open in their society, but it is forms of trafficking. Parents either by accident or have intentionally sold their children into slave labor. And I say by accident because a lot of parents are tricked into selling their children into slave labor. They think that they are going to be going to a school, like I mentioned earlier. Trafficker comes into their village. They live in an isolated village. They don't even have internet connection. A trafficker comes there wearing nice clothes and having a cell phone and all the things. And they offer their parents, oh, your child is so smart, so intelligent. If you just let them come into the city with me, I will enroll them in school and they are going to have this amazing life. They're going to have this great career. They're not going to live in a village their whole lives. They're going to live in the big city. So parents with the best of intentions send their children with these traffickers having no idea that they just sold their child into slavery. And then they're working 18 hours a day in a brick yard or in a candy factory or in some clothing factory, and they never see their kids again. Or their children will be a little bit older, and a trafficker, same kind of situation, will offer them a job. Oh, they're going to go work in this really easy job, like 4 hours a day. They'll go to school the other hours, so they'll be more open that the kid's going to be working, but still not to the extent. And these trafficking situations are horrible. They're factories that you can barely breathe in, you can barely see in. Their children are hurt, they die. It's terrible. It's really bad stuff. So labor trafficking looks different overseas because it's not unusual to see children working. So it is harder to identify that trafficking because it's so mass. So that's definitely one of the issues there. But trafficking in any situation in any country can be any age, gender, or race. So it isn't just children that are trafficked. There's labor trafficking overseas that is adults as well. And it's similar situations where they're tricked into this great job. You're going to come work here. You're going to get this amazing wage. And they either go to a different country or they go to a different city than they were promised. And the job is completely different. They're not a waitress. They're a house slave, or they're working in the kitchen for 18, 19 hours a day and not getting paid at all, being beat. So the situations are terrible, but labor protections aren't great in every other country. So sometimes it's hard for their own citizens of those countries to identify that it is trafficking because they're used to not having great situations for labor in general, normal jobs. Debt bondage is something we see overseas that you're not going to see so much in America, and that is when it's really common in Asia and in the Middle East, where someone in your family 3 generations ago borrowed $20 from a rich farmer, and the interest has been racking up and racking up and racking up for generations, and that $20 is now it doesn't even matter the amount because you'll never pay it back. It could only be $25, but the $25 has been $25 for, 30 years. It's never going to get paid back. So you, your family, their kids, kids are all living on the same plantation, farm, brickyard, working off this impossible debt. So that's not something you're going to see here stateside, but overseas, it's very common. And then sex slavery, which is sex trafficking, the most highly talked about form of trafficking. And overseas, that again looks different than it's going to look here. Overseas, there's a lot of places that have legalized prostitution, but just because prostitution is legal does not mean that they're not being trafficked. So a lot of these places that will have legalized prostitution over the age of 18 or whatever their age of consent is in that particular country, they will have pimps that are which are traffickers that are forcing them to work and forcing them to meet a certain amount of clients per night. We've had cases where a victim's child was being held by the trafficker. So every night he would take her child and he would not let her have her child back, a very young little girl, until she had sold an adequate amount of what he thought was money, had serviced enough clients. So that's one way that we see sex trafficking over there, is prostitution being legalized and traffickers exploiting that. Another way is parents accidentally or intentionally selling their children into sex trafficking. So kind of like I had mentioned earlier, the similar situation with I'll take your kid to school, they're going to live this great life, and a little girl's taken to a brothel in Kathmandu and she's sold every day to 12 different guys. That happens as well. And then there's the parents that intentionally are selling their kids where they know, and it's happening in their own homes, where they're allowing people to come in and abuse their children for money or for food or drugs or whatever that is, something of value. And CSAM. CSAM is huge. It's produced overseas, it's received overseas, and it's produced here and received here in America as well. So CSAM, child sexual assault material, the new word for child pornography, is produced by a lot of people overseas, and people are selling their children to be used in these images to make a profit for themselves, or the children are being exploited by relatives and the parents are unaware. So CSAM is huge. A lot of it is produced overseas. A lot of it is, it's bad. And they'll use images that aren't as what you would traditionally consider bad, where little kids are naked on a beach, but that's still being used for exploitive reasons, and the children are still being victimized. So overseas trafficking, it has a lot of dimensions to it. And mainly what people are capitalizing on is that impoverished situations and loopholes in the law where prostitution is legal or labor regulations maybe aren't so great. So you're able to skirt the law and you're able to, be a trafficker in plain sight for a lot of these things. Now, CSAM and child sexual abuse, almost every country and every culture knows that that's wrong. So that's going to be more hidden like it is in America. But parents overseas and in America can be complicit in this and can, contribute to their children being trafficked as well as themselves. There is no age, race, or gender that trafficking targets. It targets everyone.
Absolutely. It's true that definitions are often different overseas than here. So like there's a big difference between what an orphan means in the United States versus some other countries. Have you found any definitions like that have really posed kind of really a challenge for you?
Absolutely. So orphan is a great one. Haiti has one of the most orphanages in the world. Most of the kids in the Haitian orphanages are not orphans. They have one or both living parents. So children will be given to or sold into orphanages because the parents can't or don't want to provide for them anymore. And that is when no one's looking out for you, that's a blood relative or is investment in you, you are a prime target. So that's definitely one. There's other definitions that people just don't give them enough weight. And I think that's the main problem is overseas, prostitution. Oh, I want to do this. It's fine. It's not a big deal. And prostitution is essentially the same thing in both countries, in America and overseas. But it, here it's looked down upon. Over there, it's almost not a point of pride, but it's not as hidden. It's not
It's
something
cultural
that
differences. Yeah, what they're
there is,
used to.
cultural.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely.
Cultural differences are huge, and they're more likely to give in to authority. In a lot of these societies, women are still second-class citizens. So they don't even believe that they have rights. They don't believe that they're able to speak out. They know they're not happy with what's being done to them, but they don't think they have a right to do anything else. So that's huge too, not feeling like they're able to speak out or go to the police. Why that's perfect for a trafficker. Prostitution's legal and the women are afraid to go to the police because a man told her to do something. That's perfect for them.
Yeah. That is so unfortunate. That's a huge hurdle. Because you're really
It is.
talking about elevating a society to respect women. So that's a huge battle, a different battle than
It is.
trafficking. So tell me if you were talking to a parent in the United States, because I think a lot of people think, oh, that doesn't happen here, or even not a parent, just the general public.
Sure.
Like, what does trafficking look like here in the United States, and what should people be looking out for?
Yeah, so it's easier to think about overseas trafficking, right? Where you see the poor kid that's dirty and they're starving and that's it's almost like watching those SPCA commercials, where you feel really bad, but you're like, that's not my dog, so it's fine. It's similar here, where trafficking does happen here, but it's not what people think it is. So there's this prolific rumor of a little blonde girl being kidnapped in a Target parking lot and being held in chains in a basement. And that's what people in America picture American trafficking as, is the only way my kid will get trafficked is if they're kidnapped from me. So as long as I know where they're at and I have a death grip on them, there's no way they're going to be trafficked. Well, that's not true. Your kid could be trafficked in your own house while they're living with you, and you might not ever know. They could be coming home every single day from a trafficking situation and not say anything to you and being trafficked for years. And that's honestly the more common method of sex trafficking in the US. So, specifically for American parents that are citizens of America. And I'll talk about the problems with labor trafficking in the States here in a little bit. But first, to focus on sex trafficking. Sex trafficking in the States is going to look more like the Romeo effect, where girls or boys, again, age, gender, race doesn't matter. It could be adults, it could be children. They meet someone, maybe they're going through a hard time in their life, or they're just, maybe their self confidence is a little low, whatever it is. They have some type of weakness that the trafficker is going to exploit. And they meet a guy, they meet a girl, and that person is just the nicest person. They're buying them gifts, they're taking them places, taking them on dates, just all that. And they're wooed, love bombed by that person. And then as time goes along, they maybe move in with them. They start living with them, or they're still living at home, but they're seeing them all the time. And now they're this person, this lover person is saying, well, I'm having a really hard time making rent this month. Could you just maybe like sleep with my buddy and he's going to give me some money and that I'll make rent and it's just this one time, I'll forgive you. It won't count as cheating. It'll be fine. It's not one time. And it's going to continue to go on and continue to go on. And these people can be within your own home. It could be your own children coming home. And it doesn't even have to be sleeping with them. It could be, send me these images, and that child's under the age of 18. They're sending images, that's CSAM. And now the lover boy is using those images to force them into, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to show your parents these pictures you took, or I'm going to have you arrested for CSAM because you made these pictures and it's CSAM. Then they'll threaten them legally. But these kids could be taking those pictures in your own home and sending them to people. They could be being trafficked when they go out to hang out with their boyfriend and coming home and sleeping in your house. So it's not believing that the only way kids are trafficked in America is to be kidnapped, and that if your kid is at home, they're not a victim of trafficking, is not the right way to think about it. It could be anyone, and it could be any age. They could be coming home. They don't have to cross state lines to be trafficked. They don't have to even go to another town. They could be trafficked within their own home. So that's something that people really need to start to understand, is that it truly could happen to anyone. The best kids, there's nothing wrong with the trafficking victim. They didn't do anything to deserve this, and they're not bad kids. So, but traffickers, they're good. They're very manipulative, and they will find weaknesses to exploit. So I think that's something that should be talked about more, is the ability for this to happen under your own roofs, under your own houses. And it's often, if it's not by someone, the lover boy effect, often CSAM images are produced in the States as well. And that's often done by family members, whether it's parents or other relatives. It's done by people close to you. People have this misconception that it's only strangers that would hurt your family. That's not true. Most commonly, people that hurt you are people you know. It's very uncommon for a kidnapping to be a complete stranger, or a sexual assault to be a complete stranger, or even a homicide, a murder to be a complete stranger. It's very uncommon. Sometimes, most of the time, the people that hurt you are the closest to you. So it's just something to think about. People have this image of strangers taking their kids, but when in reality, it's family members within your own home that are doing it right under your nose.
That's a nice thought right before Valentine's Day. Thanks there.
Yeah, anytime.
Terrible. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't
I
think
know.
people think of that at all. And it is
Yeah.
scarily true. And so the other place that traffickers kind of frequent, and we'll wrap it up here because I know that you have many things to do besides chat about this, but another
No.
place that the traffickers frequent our malls and other areas, kind of looking for kids to groom. Can you talk a little bit more about
Absolutely.
that and kind of what kid they're looking for and how to educate your kids about what's hinky or what's too good to be true and what's not?
Absolutely. So traffickers are going to look for the and I hate to say the weakest link because I want a better word for that. So if anyone has one, let me know. They're going to look for kids that have weaknesses, whether that's strained family relationships, low self-esteem, something, some chink in their armor that a trafficker is able to get in and exploit. And the way you combat that as a parent is just being open and honest with your kids and having these hard conversations. I have a 13-year-old stepdaughter, and I have these conversations with her, and I have these conversations with her friends. And for example, one of her friends recently got a little boyfriend on Snapchat that lives in California and sends pictures of his abs. She's never met him, never FaceTime with him. Anyone see any problems here? You know, it having these and but my kid came to me right away and told me about this. She's like, "This is what's going on. I think I want you to talk to my friend about that and tell her what you know." I'm like, "Great, I will." So, but if I hadn't had conversations with my kid before about this and about what I do and about this world, even you don't have to work in this world to have a conversation with your kid. If something seems uncomfortable, seems too good to be true, you don't know them, you need to tell an adult and you need to talk to an adult. There's no reason to be messaging people you don't know. And for like example, you know, malls and in-person meetings. I mentioned Snapchat, which is a big problem. Don't let your kids download Snapchat. Public service announcement. I think is probably beaten to the ground, but again, don't let your kids download Snapchat. They're going to go into these public locations and they're going to look at the groups of kids, you know, who seems like they're getting pushed to the side, who doesn't seem like the star, who seems like they want more attention and they're not getting it somewhere else. That's where they're going to go. They're going to go to someone that has this in for them, that they can make feel like a princess, maybe feel like they never have before. Princess or prince, again, could be both genders. So having and I don't want to overstate this, but just really having good relationships with your kids and talking to them and having these conversations with their friends too, knowing where they're at, who they're hanging out with. Did you meet anyone today while you were out? You know, who are you texting? Who are you talking? And you don't have to be so overbearing because you want them to come to us, right? You don't want to constrict them so much that they eventually you completely go the opposite way and don't tell you anything and shut you out. I'm sure we all know someone that had super strict parents when they were kids. And then when they got older, they just made a complete 180 and they just went off the rails. You don't want to be that either, but you want to find this healthy balance between educating them, not scaring them, but being that place for them to land and know, for example, to go back to what we were talking about with CSAM, kids are probably going to send messages that they shouldn't, and they're probably going to take pictures that they shouldn't. They're kids. It's 2023, and it's a reality we need to accept. Where you come in as a parent is letting them know that even if that happens, you will love them the same and you will help no matter what, that they're not going to be in trouble. But you just want to know what's going on because you cannot protect them if you don't know what's going on.
You want them to be able to come talk to you and say, this is happening before it gets deeper and more dangerous.
Absolutely. Yeah, you
Absolutely.
always want to be able to have those conversations, you know, and it's hard. The first couple are going to be really challenging. It's not easy to have these conversations. It's super uncomfortable and I know that. But what's more uncomfortable is the conversation when your kid comes to you and says, I've been raped, I've been trafficked, this person's been
Absolutely.
hurting me for years.
Or when they disappear. So
Or when
absolutely.
you don't see them again, they stop. And the disappearance with these Romeo and lover boys, it's slow. It's I'm gonna spend a day there, I'm gonna spend 2 days there, I'm gonna spend a week, and then you don't see your kid anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us today and certainly for the work you're doing in the US and across the globe. It's sad that you're needed, but I feel better that you're out there helping kids, helping people of all ages, sexes, genders to not be trafficked, to not be abused. So I appreciate your time during Human Trafficking and Slavery Awareness Month. I'm sure that you have some resources on your website, which is lanternrescue.org. Is that correct?
That
Yep.
is correct.
And the U.S. Department of Homeland Security has the Blue Campaign. And if you're interested in getting posters, more information, anything to spread awareness, the DHS Blue Campaign has a tremendous number of resources on their website, and that's just DHS Blue Campaign. Could put that in Google and get there in a flash. So thank you, Ren, for being with us today. We wish you luck. We hope many of our folks watching this will host a dinner or, start sharing your stuff. And we appreciate what you do. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.